The shocking truth, revealed through a tapestry of memoirs, interviews, and historical records, is not a simple tale of a single villainous act. It is a far more complex and devastating story of shared trauma, a catastrophic medical disaster, and the cruel, psychologically manipulative machinations of the Hollywood studio system that turned two victims against each other. In the beginning, there was no animosity. When pre-production for The Wizard of Oz began in 1938, Buddy Ebsen, an established song and dance man known for his work in Broadway musicals and films with Shirley Temple, was cast as the Scarecrow. The role of the Tin Woodman went to Ray Bolger, but Bolger, whose heart was set on playing the loose-limbed Scarecrow, used his considerable clout to swap parts. Ebsen, ever the professional, agreed to the switch. He saw the potential in the Tin Man, a character whose longing for a heart could be expressed through a poignant, stiff-limbed dance. For 9 weeks, Ebsen threw himself into the role. He worked closely with Judy Garland, then a wide-eyed 16-year-old, rehearsing their songs and scenes, including the iconic "We're Off to See the Wizard." They were co-stars, partners in creating the magical journey down the yellow brick road. By all accounts, their relationship was cordial, professional, and filled with the collaborative spirit of a major production. Ebsen, a kind and avuncular figure, likely represented a stable, friendly presence for the young Judy amidst the chaos of the MGM machine. Then came the makeup. The original Tin Man costume was a nightmare. To achieve the metallic look, Ebsen was clad in a full-body suit of cheap, porous cloth, over which a paste made of pure aluminum dust was applied. It was claustrophobic, uncomfortable, and, as it would soon be revealed, deadly. The aluminum dust paste was not merely uncomfortable, it was a toxic substance. With every breath, Ebsen was inhaling microscopic particles of metal. The process was slow and insidious. He would later describe the experience in his autobiography, feeling progressively weaker, suffering from cramps and shortness of breath. He felt his body slowly shutting down. The crisis point came after a full day of shooting the "We're Off to See the Wizard" sequence. Ebsen went home feeling violently ill. His body was in revolt. He was rushed to the hospital, where doctors fought to save his life. The diagnosis was catastrophic. He was suffering from severe aluminum poisoning. The metal dust had coated his lungs, making it impossible for him to breathe properly. He was placed in an iron lung, his survival hanging in the balance. The studio's response was swift and ruthless. MGM, in a move that would define its corporate heartlessness, did not issue a press release expressing concern for their critically ill actor. Instead, they simply recast the part. They saw Ebsen not as a human being fighting for his life, but as a malfunctioning piece of equipment that needed to be replaced. His name was scrubbed from the production notes, his existence in the role all but erased. The new Tin Man was Jack Haley. Crucially, the formula for the aluminum paste was changed for Haley, who wore a painted rubber suit instead. Haley suffered eye infections from the glue, but he avoided the life-threatening fate of his predecessor. Buddy Ebsen spent weeks in the hospital, and it took him nearly a year to fully recover his health. He had nearly died for the role, and his reward was to be fired, forgotten, and left with massive medical bills. This is where the true source of Judy Garland's bitterness begins to crystallize, not in Ebsen's actions, but in the poisonous narrative spun by the studio to control her. Imagine the scene from Judy's perspective. One day, her co-star and friend Buddy Ebsen is there, rehearsing and joking with her. The next, he is gone, replaced by Jack Haley with a vague, studio-sanctioned explanation about an allergy. The full, terrifying truth of his near-death experience was kept from her. The MGM publicity machine, overseen by the ruthless Louis B. Mayer and his enforcers, could not allow the story of an actor being poisoned on set to leak to the public. It would shatter the illusion of the magical land of Oz and expose the dangerous, exploitative conditions behind the glittering facade. But a vacuum of information, especially for a sensitive and anxious young woman like Judy, must be filled. The studio heads, fearing her reaction, perhaps a refusal to continue working with the deadly makeup or an emotional breakdown, fed her a lie. They needed a scapegoat, someone to blame for the disruption. According to several biographers and those close to Garland, the narrative she was sold went something like this. Buddy Ebsen wasn't a victim. He was a quitter. He was weak. He couldn't handle the rigors of the role and had simply walked off the picture, abandoning her and the entire production. He had left her high and dry. This lie was psychologically brilliant and utterly devastating. For Judy Garland, whose entire sense of security was tied to the studio and the success of her work, abandonment was a primal fear. She was a child star carrying the weight of a multi-million-dollar production on her shoulders. The idea that a key cast member would simply desert her fed into her deepest insecurities. In her mind, Ebsen's departure wasn't a medical emergency. It was a personal betrayal. As the years passed, The Wizard of Oz became a cultural touchstone, and Judy Garland's life became a whirlwind of fame, addiction, and personal turmoil. The trauma of her time at MGM, including the forced dieting, the drug cocktails, and the relentless pressure, festered. The story of Buddy Ebsen's abandonment became a fixed part of her personal mythology, a small, specific hurt that came to represent the larger betrayals she experienced. Meanwhile, Buddy Ebsen, having recovered his health, slowly rebuilt his career. He never publicly expressed bitterness toward Garland. He understood the machinery of Hollywood better than most. In interviews later in life, he spoke of the poisoning incident with a sense of weary resignation, but he always maintained a respectful, if distant tone about Judy. He seemed to recognize that they were both casualties of the same system. But Judy could not, or would not, see it that way. The lie she was told at 16 had taken root, her refusal to have him on. The Judy Garland Show in 1963 was a stark demonstration of how deeply the wound still cut. For Ebsen, it must have been a confusing and painful snub. For Judy, it was a matter of principle. She would not work with a man who had, in her mind, betrayed her at one of the most pivotal moments of her life. So, the shocking truth is not that Buddy Ebsen was a monster who deserved Judy Garland's hatred. The shocking truth is the opposite. He was an innocent man, a fellow victim who became the unwitting target of her misplaced rage. The real villain of this story was the MGM studio system itself. Its priorities were profit and image, never people. It nearly killed Buddy Ebsen with toxic makeup, and then, to cover its tracks, it emotionally manipulated a teenage girl by turning her against him. It weaponized Judy's vulnerability and Ebsen's misfortune to ensure the smooth operation of its fantasy factory. This revelation reframes their entire relationship. It wasn't a personal feud, but a tragic case of collateral damage. They were two actors on the same yellow brick road, both subjected to the whims of a merciless wizard behind the curtain. Ebsen suffered a physical poisoning that nearly ended his life. Garland suffered a psychological poisoning, a lie that festered for a lifetime, warping her perception of a man who had done her no wrong. In the end, the story of why Judy Garland despised Buddy Ebsen is a perfect, painful microcosm of her entire life. It is a tale of how the bright, hopeful dreams of Hollywood are so often built on a foundation of real human suffering. It shows how the powerful can manipulate the vulnerable, turning victims against each other to obscure their own culpability. Buddy Ebsen carried the physical scars of Oz in his lungs for a year. Judy Garland carried the emotional scars of a manufactured betrayal for a lifetime. The yellow brick road led them both to a terrible truth, that in the land of make-believe, the most dangerous monsters weren't the wicked witches or the flying monkeys, but the men in suits who were willing to sacrifice anything and anyone for the sake of the show